Okay, so we're going to be doing a quick overview of bagels here. Bagels, we're going to be hand mixing these, and the bagel recipe that's up on Talent is involves a sponge. So I'm doing a half a recipe of bagels, and what I've got here is I've got a sponge that I've allowed to grow for about half an hour. Actually, it's been about an hour, and this has really grown. I've also just measured out the water and the salt in here, and I'm going to put that sponge starter into the water, and I'm just going to break it up. The water will help it dissolve and help it break down so that it mixes more evenly into the dough. So remember, I'm doing half a batch. A full batch, I'll make about 6 bagels. This is probably going to make about half of that, about 3. So I'm just going to break this up, get this all broken down. And then we're going to measure the flour into this. The salt is also in this water. And you'll see on the recipe it calls for malt syrup. You can also use honey. And honey, as we've used before, is a natural sugar. It works great. And what it is just a small amount to give the yeast some food to grow. Okay, so I'm gonna turn on my scale here, and I'm gonna zero it. And we need to have, I'm doing about half a batch. So I'm gonna measure out about 200 grams of flour. There we go. And we're just going to go ahead and get this mixed. Everything's in here now, so we're just going to get this to come together as a dough. I'll get this scale out of the way because we're going to be putting this out onto the bench. The other thing we're doing today is we're feeding our sourdough. We started the sourdough way up on Monday, and we let it sit overnight, and then we stirred it again. And now we fed it yesterday when we were doing pretzels, and now I fed it again today. So what I did was I took my existing sourdough starter and I took about a spoonful of it, threw the rest away, and fed it with about 50 grams of flour and about 50 grams of water, and that gave me another feed. So basically the yeast, whatever natural yeast is in there, is getting fed. And you'll see this is the result of that. I just have that in that little container. Every day we're going to be doing that. So tomorrow we'll bring it out again, and we'll just take about a spoonful of it, put it in a container, and we'll go ahead and feed that again. So I'm turning this out onto the table. Now it's starting to come together as a cohesive dough. All the dry stuff is important in there too, so I'm making sure not to lose any of that. So as I knead this, I'm going to go for about 10 minutes on kneading. And with 10 minutes of kneading, you'll definitely earn your keep by putting in the work it takes to knead this dough. Okay, so we're going to weigh out this dough. This dough has been kneaded, and one thing about bagels is it doesn't require any immediate fermentation. So I'm going to change my units over to ounces, and I'm going to measure out 5.33 ounces for each bagel. So that's almost 5. Now these will then go in the refrigerator after they're shaped, and they're going to be they're going to sit and form a skin. And when they form a skin, the idea behind that is that they're going to form this sort of leathery outer skin that's going to help prevent the water from sinking into them. Because after they go in the refrigerator, the next step is we're going to take them over to the boiling water, and we're going to be boiling them And we put them in the water, let them sink, and then they float. And when they float, that tells us that they're about ready to be put in the oven. So unlike some other things, like when we made pretzels and put them in a chemical bath, these are going just in hot water and they're going to be boiled. So I'm going to pre-shape these into something of a log. So I just kind of gently flatten them down, roll over and pinch until I form a log. And as I say, these are about 8 inches. These are about 8 inches long. The idea here is to just get them pre-shaped so they're willing to be rolled out a little bit more. We don't need to go much further than this to make a bagel. Okay, so I said it would make about 3. It's making about 3. So let's try rolling this out a little bit further to about 12 inches. I'm going to wrap it around my hand so it overlaps by about 2 inches or so. And I'm going to take that overlap and I'm going to roll it on the table to close that joint. And that's a bagel. So basically all it is a strand, and as measurement I use my hand. I wrap it around my hand so it gets about a 2-inch overlap, and then I roll that on the table to seal the joint. As I say, once these are shaped, they're going to go in the fridge for a while, and then we're going to take them over and boil them. Once they're boiled, they go straight in the oven after that. This is a good time for you to preheat your oven. Your oven should be about 500 degrees Fahrenheit. And these will be baking a little later on an oiled piece of parchment, and they'll be at 500 degrees. All right, so we got water boiling. We're going to take our bagels, and I'm going to stick one into the water. We can stick another one into the water. And what we're watching for is for them to float. I like to go down here to the bottom though, and I like to double check they're not sticking to the bottom of the pot, because they can sometimes do that. They'll sometimes go down there. Turn this fire down just a little bit. I want to see them float though. Now, why do they float? Well, what's going to happen here is the heat is going to activate the yeast. The yeast is going to create carbon dioxide, gets trapped in the dough. That carbon dioxide obviously is air, so it's going to cause the bagel to float. Once it floats, we know it's been in there long enough to do its job. Now, what it's doing essentially is the hot water is partially cooking. Here comes one. It's starting to float. Out it comes. Stick it on the paper. There, this one's floating. Time to pull this one out. Anyway, the flour on the outside, that's in the dough, on the outside of these bagels is starting to cook. And when it does, it's starting to gelatinize the starch. That's causing it to soak up water, but it's also creating a barrier to the inside. The gases can't escape. So this is going to create really great shine on your bagels. It's also going to create a really nice chewy texture. That's exactly what we want with bagels. And that's really what makes them distinctive. Otherwise, we just throw them in the oven and bake them. But this is what makes them special. So as this one is getting ready, it's almost ready to float. As it does, we're going to go ahead and stick it in the oven. And as I say, 500 degrees, about 10 to 15 minutes, depending on your oven. Here it comes, starting to float, and they will be done. And you'll have some of the best, freshest bagels that you can have. All right, here they are, fresh out of the oven. You can see they got some good browning, great shine. This is how your bagels will come out. This is about the color I'm looking for, usually about medium brown. And they're hot. I mean, when they come out of the oven, they are hot. So wait for them to cool down a little bit until they're easy to handle. Split them open, slap on some cream cheese, and you're ready to go. Let's get back again tomorrow. We're going to make some Kaiser rolls, and we're going to feed our sourdough again. So I'll see you tomorrow.